Hello. I'm very much talking up here.
On your seat.
Brian, shall I?
All right, everybody, welcome back from the break. We're going ahead and move on with the next segment of our program. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Edwina Rogers. She joined the Secular Coalition for America in May 2012. She has over 2 decades of experience on Capitol Hill as a lobbyist and an attorney. She has extensive experience as a public policy expert and has worked for 2 presidents and 4 senators. So if everyone would please give her a warm welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Brian is our co-chair for the Secular Coalition for Pennsylvania, so I'm very pleased to be introduced by him. And so, as Brian said, I'm the executive director for the Secular Coalition for America. And in November, it will be our 11th year. And basically, in a nutshell, we're here to unify the movement. And we also work to facilitate coordination within the movement at the national level and also at the state level. So we're a little bit big picture. And also we do the heavy lifting on the lobbying side at the national level and some international and even in all 50 states. So you can kind of think of us as your diplomats. You can think of me as your lobbyists. Many of the state chapters think of me as their back office support that's always working and always says yes. So that's what you want in your lobbyists. So just a little bit about the problem that we're up against with regard to lobbying, and then we're going to get into sort of the basic topic that I was asked to speak about today, and it has to do with moving beyond our base. How are we going to attract women and minorities and other groups that are underrepresented in the secular, in the non-theist movement? And so we have a strategy that we've put together. So the problem has to do with, you can see here, that the Christian voters have quite the block going on, especially in the Republican Party. And I find it very interesting that in 1976 and 1980, Christian right voters were more likely to vote for a Democratic candidate than a Republican. And then in the 1980s, they came into the Republican Party. I was operating in that party at that time and still am. And I remember when they were coming in and thinking, oh, well, aren't they, cute with their strollers? Let them in. We're a big tent party. They'll be 3 or 4%. But, the rest is history, y'all. We know where we are now. And a lot of the problem actually got going. Why did they get so motivated and start to get into politics? Well, there were several causes, but I would like to think that a lot of it had to do with, in the research that I've done, and kind of being around at that time, although a little bit younger than I am now, was when Jimmy Carter announced that he was considering highly to take away the tax-exempt status from religious schools if they did not integrate. So a lot of it did have to do with racism, actually. So that's the problem. And you can see here on this chart, the blue circles going up would be the secular movement, the non-theists, moving into the Democratic Party, and then the red circles going down are them leaving the Republican Party, and a lot of it has to do with because the Christian right was coming into that party. Some examples that we've seen since the Faith and Freedom Foundation, which is the new group that was the Christian Coalition, the Moral Majority. We have creationism being taught now in public schools and it being legal in 2 states. It passed in Tennessee and Louisiana, so that's something that we are all over. We are definitely up against a big dog here. You can see by the small puppy and the larger dog has to do with, we know that the religious right is spending approximately about $390 million a year on their lobbying, and the Secular Coalition for America on our lobbying piece last year spent about $348,000. We'll be spending quite a bit more this year. And as you know, we are nonpartisan and we have trouble with both parties. This is a quote from a senior Obama administration official who said that we don't view you as a constituency. We don't do outreach to that community. So we have much work to do in both parties. Obviously, a lot more work to do in the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. So who are the secular voters and what are the issues that they care about? How is the Secular Coalition for America making a difference? And then at the end, I'll talk about how in particular you can make a difference. So we represent what we call the nuns, non-affiliated with religion. This number keeps going up every year. As a matter of fact, some of the new Pew poll statistics just came out. It is about 22%. So we have about 22% that are documented not affiliated with religion in the US. And then of course you get down to a core number that would be atheists and agnostics, as we heard earlier from David Silverman. And then how does this fit in with the rest of the world, which is very interesting, and it's trending less religious. So there's not a country in Western Europe that has more than a 40% God belief. With these numbers right here, that leaves us close to an 80% God belief. The only country that's considered a Western industrialized country with a higher God belief than the United States would be Kuwait. Even our friends to the north, Canada, only has a 50% God belief. And if you go down to Australia and New Zealand, it's about 35%. And you have some countries like Sweden and Estonia where it's less than 20%. And even Catholic France is only 40%, and UK slightly less than that. So you can see that we're standing out there in a situation that we probably won't be able to be in that much longer, and that would be very much to a benefit. We also claim people who think that their political leaders should not rely on religious beliefs when they're making their decisions, and that is 55% of America, so that is in our favor. And then now to the heart of the talk. How are we going to reach out and include more women, LGBTQI, African Americans, Latinos, conservatives, journalists, science groups, religious groups, and the people under 30. These are the target groups, and we have an implementation plan at the Secular Coalition for America that will be working with our 50 state chapters, and we've raised funding for this very aggressive outreach program. And we're going to go through a few of these in detail, in particular the women and the minorities. So you can see here, I know it's really hard to see this graph here, but the top represents the male and the bottom represents the female on a variety of questions here. So women are underrepresented in the secular movement. And why is this the case? Fewer women than men identify as atheists, agnostics, or even unaffiliated. We have 64% male and 36% female. Of the general population, 23% of men and 17% of women describe themselves as religiously unaffiliated. So that's a pretty substantial gap between the genders there. Now let's look at some of the reasons as to, why are women more religious than men? Atheism appeals to people in science where women, we know, are underrepresented. Churches provide support structure for women and children, meals, after-school care, daycare at reduced prices, free summer programs, and a perceived safe community. So one of the most religious humans on the planet would be a pregnant female. And I remember growing up in Alabama and staying in touch with a lot of my girlfriends in Alabama. Many of them will use Vacation Bible School throughout the summer to park their children. And they do it because they're working full time and they simply don't have the funds to pay for daycare and childcare. and most of them is not what they want to do. I mean, they'll even park them over on a week with the Catholics or Mormons or wherever they can get free vacation Bible school. And we know that is not the right thing for the children. So moving on, why women should be more secular? Well, the list is very long. Religion has never been an ally for women's equality, and in many organizations today, women still cannot hold the top leadership roles. Religious organizations are the primary opponents of the real-life reproductive needs of women, and for women, reproductive control equals economic self-determination. So that's a very important message that we need to get out to our women. How the secular movement can help. In order for women to participate, they need more of their basic needs addressed first. For many women, this revolves around family obligations. We must create a culture that addresses women's needs. So a secular plan could be provide secular daycare options. That would be very important. Align the movement with groups offering after-school activities like science clubs, books clubs, and sports. And this will help to stop the indoctrination. And there are many groups that we've identified that we want to have as allied groups. You can see the list here is quite long of the target groups. So what are we doing? We are registered to table at many of their conventions where we're going to sign people up. We're going to have materials there. And we're working hard to get on the agenda as a speaker. As a matter of fact, one of our staff people just got back from Chicago where she was speaking at the National Organization of Women. So what is our track record on women's issues at the Secular Coalition for America? We have in the past, and we continue to fight legislation that creates religious exemptions for issues that directly affect women, such as Health and Human Services contraception mandate, fighting faith-based hiring discrimination, women being barred from doing specific jobs, continuing to lobby on bills like the Violence Against Women Act. SCA lobbied against religious exemptions there because the more religious exemptions, the more women are going to be harmed and excluded. So I mentioned what we're doing for women and our big plan there. What are we doing for minorities? So we have also a master plan on how we're reaching out to minority communities. And here are some practical ideas to help address the shortfall of ethnic minorities and other groups, including conservatives in our movement, so that we can create diversity within our movement, which is very much to our advantage. So our minority group outreach program has to do with tailoring the message to minority groups. So that's something that we're working on now. We're working on what we call toolkits that are tailored for journalists in different minority communities so that we can educate the journalists to speak about non-theist beliefs and values. So for example, this is probably, I hope David Silverman's already left. Yeah, he did. Atheist does not play well in many minority groups, especially in Black communities. But other words do play very well, the research shows, like for example, free thought plays well. We would do a better job if we tone down our rhetoric in terms like, and use terms like free thinker, reaching out to minority groups. And diversity in college, that is somewhere that we can really target. Organization groups like Secular Student Alliance, we have real world opportunities there in promoting diversity. Exposure to young adults through college will help formulate opinions on community for the rest of their lives. And we're interested in minority-focused groups. So work as a movement to support race-focused organizations. People will feel more comfortable coming out when they are surrounded by those that they can relate to. Shared experiences can help offer a much-needed sense of community. And then we have a big initiative going with the journalists. You would be surprised at how much bigotry and lack of information, even among our journalists. So we are going to be tabling at the National Association of Black Journalists, the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, the National Association of Women in Journalism, Asian American Journalists Association. And many of these journalists are mainstream journalists working for national publications, and many of them also write for newsletters or publications that are targeting minority groups. Now, other groups that we are going to be after over the next year have to do with science groups, conservative groups. Some of them are low-hanging fruit. Of course, we do well with science groups, but let's do better. Conservative groups, we don't do so well with them, but let's go talk to them also. Religious writers, we'll go after them. You know we're really aggressive. We want to go after the religious writers. And religious groups, and the people under 30, which many of them are already in our camp, about 40%. So this big outreach program, give us time. It's going to take some time. And we would like to challenge every group that's in the room. A lot of you are involved in many groups at the national level or the state level or the local level to pretty much try to do the same thing. Always think about tabling and attending events that are focused on minorities and women's and some of the other groups that we mentioned. So outreach to minority and non-secular communication is going to communities is going to be a marathon and not a sprint. Now, a little bit we'll turn over to what are we doing on the lobbying side. This is just a list of example at the national level, some of the things that that we're battling, some of the craziness, so you can get an idea. I'll just mention a few because we don't have a lot of time today. There's HR 973, religious exemption to the contraception mandate. They want a much more broad one. HR 898, religious organizations using taxpayer money without limits. And the list goes on. So we're up on Capitol Hill every day battling all types of bad legislation that takes down the wall of separation between religion and government. So what are the major areas that we focus on? Health and safety, education, tax policy, discrimination, government actions, and the military. Of course, also we're involved in international issues. And on health and safety, the big issues there are contraception mandate, pharmacists denying emergency contraception, which happens at the state level, medical neglect of children through faith healing. On the education side, which is a key priority for most of the people who are in our database. Every time we do a survey, it comes back, number one, we want our children to be taught medically correct sex education. We want our children to be taught proper science, reason, and critical thinking to prepare them for the international job market. So we have a problem with voucher programs where money's going to religious schools, absence-only sex education, creationism, and intelligent design in the classrooms. And it's precisely the intelligent design is what they have relabeled creationism, and we're able to get it passed in Tennessee and also Louisiana, and we're fighting it in about 12 states right now. Religious privileging in the tax code is also something that's very important, and we did file comments with the House Ways and Means Committee, and they were included in their recommendations. I think it blew away all the religious groups. They think that their religious privileging is just so much intact that it would never be challenged. But when you show that a lot of money can be saved, you can get some traction even with the Republicans. So houses of worship are endorsing candidates. Faith-based nonprofits are exempt from IRS reporting. They don't even have to register. Tax subsidies and exemptions for religious organizations are about $71 billion a year. We are all over discrimination issues. There is employer religious discrimination, and I know Margaret does a really good job of keeping a log on all types of discrimination. Landlords violating discrimination laws, using religion as a justification, government-issued marriage license requirements based on religious dogma, and then adoption discrimination. A lot of federal dollars go to adoption agencies. Many of them are Catholic charities. And do you really think the atheist parents are being put at the top of the list? No, I don't think so. And you can see here with just the list over on your right, the whole marriage equality issue, a lot of that is blamed on traditional marriage and what is in the Bible. These are the 11 national groups that are on our board and are members of the Secular Coalition for America, and we're changing our structure. We're getting a smaller independent board, and we're going to be opening up the membership to other groups. We'll have voting members and associate members, so you should see the coalition grow starting quite rapidly here in the next couple of months, because we just got those changes through. Because we want to be a big, broad, diverse coalition, and it certainly helps us when we're going in, we're trying to get a seat at the table with the decision makers. The more we have in the coalition, the better for us. We do have what we call the best 30 minutes every week in the secular movement. Every Thursday at noon for only 30 minutes, we all get on the phone, the secular leaders, and we go over what's happening with the White House and Congress, all the secular events and secular news, how we're doing in the press, and what are opportunities in the press coming up in the next week or two, what's happening before the UN, what's happening with the students, a judicial update, state chapters, any new research, coalition expansion, and charity opportunities. And we have about 8 presenters, and we do it all in 30 minutes. And it's all the groups that you would expect: American Humanist Association, Freedom from Religion Foundation, Center for Inquiry, Secular Student Alliance, and the list goes on. Endorsing groups, we had 34 a little more than a year ago, and as of last week we had 135. That certainly helps us. And if you're involved in a group and you haven't endorsed SEA, please just go to our website and do that. We are very much in measuring our success so that people feel like that we are getting traction, that we can show improvements. This next chart here shows that our press is up by 270% over the last year. Our number of visits and get to know you and lobbying visits on Capitol Hill are way up, and our speeches and tabling opportunities are way up, as I mentioned earlier. Now, just a little bit about the state level. You see there's a big reason for us to be bipartisan, and even more so nonpartisan. At the moment, we've got 20 states controlled by Democratic governors, 30 states controlled by Republican governors. So we are very much involved in both parties. We have set up chapters in all 50 states, which I think has really brought a lot of new life to the movement, and they are coalitions. So the Secular Coalition for Pennsylvania is very active. So why are we operating at the state level? Why is it so important? You know, we've got some examples right here. We've got Bobby Jindal, and they're laying hands on him down in Louisiana. And we have 6 states where pharmacists can refuse to dispense emergency contraception, 8 that do not inspect religious child care centers, 21 exempt employers from contraceptive coverage, 30 ban all forms of marriage except one man and one woman, 32 sex education curricula doesn't have to be medically correct, and 44 states that require under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. Hopefully Massachusetts will no longer be one of those, thanks to American Humanist Association and their Supreme Court case. Look at all the states that have a Bible curriculum taught in public schools. That's a very long list and very surprising to a lot of people. Pennsylvania's on the list. We do scorecards. This year, we're very lucky in that there are only 2 states that have elections and no federal elections other than sort of the one-off ones. Like we've got one coming up in New Jersey, Senator Lautenberg's seat. We came out last week with our scorecards for gubernatorial for Virginia, and Terry McAuliffe got an A, and the Republican got an F. And New Jersey will be coming out with our scorecards in the next week or so. We're working with our New Jersey chapter. But we have scorecards on all of the House members and the senators, and we'll be working on many more scorecards. We're, can you back it up for me? We're coming out with the Secular Policy Guide. This is very important. It is a model guide for legislators and decision makers, and it's something that staff in the House and the Senate in all 50 states and nationally can use. They can just download the information and drop it into a document. I know many times the senator that I worked for would say, okay, we've got 3 hours, there's going to be a vote on a particular topic. I want the pros and cons, and I don't want it from you because you are not the expert, Edwina. I want you to go and find sort of the most authoritative group on both sides of the issue. Now, when the staff go to try to find the authoritative group on our side of the issue, and our write-up is hard to find because it's not there, but it will be in the next 2 months. We have all kinds of resources that are available. Everything that we do is open, free, available to everybody. So we have the National Movement Call, we have a National Secular Calendar, we have Legislative Tracker that's available on all 50 websites, do the scorecards, action alerts. We now have action alerts at the state level for state lobbying, and we also have the database so that we can email all of the senators and state reps and their staff. So basically, how you can make a difference, I would strongly encourage everybody in the room to get involved in the Secular Coalition for America. Just simply get into our database. I've been walking around with clipboard, getting people to sign up. Also, we have a table, and if we just have your name, your email, and your zip code, then we can make sure you get action alerts and all the material, and then you can be a citizen lobbyist and help us. And just by your zip code, then we know which state you're in, and we can get you involved in their state chapters. And they have a call every month, and they all 50 have a website. And so here's the contact information. This is a photo of me wearing all my secular buttons at the Republican convention down in Tampa last year. We were slightly better covered at the Democratic convention than we were at the Republican convention. I felt like a lone soldier there, but I did do my best, and we did get quite a bit of press out of that. So with that, I thank you very much for letting me speak to you today, and please keep in mind the outreach that we could all be doing to women and minorities. Thank you.